We are talking typewriters on Nyberg today. I'd like you to meet Greg Fudacz, a collector of typewriters. As a journalist, I'm in love with everything you have brought here today. How did you start collecting typewriters?
A tag sale.
Tell me about it.
15, 20 years ago, went to a tag sale in West Hartford. The absolute first thing I saw, jumped out of the car, was a typewriter on a retaining wall, brick retaining wall. I kind of floated around it for a little bit. I knew I was supposed to haggle. I wasn't comfortable. And then I finally made eye contact with the woman selling it, and the sticker price said $10 on it. And I said, I'll give you $5, and she took it, and I brought it
Way
home.
to bargain.
Right, 50%
What was it about
off.
the typewriter that you loved? Did you have one at home, and or it just spoke to you?
It just spoke to me. I just gravitated towards it, and I hovered around it because I didn't want anybody else to buy it.
Huh.
And I brought it home, and I went online, and I did a little research, and it was a Royal. It was a KMM Royal, and it was made in Hartford, Connecticut.
Let's talk about Hartford.
That's what got me, was that it was made in Hartford. And then I find out not just Royal, but Underwood's. There were Underwood typewriter factory there. And between those two companies, the amount of typewriters that they produced, it made Hartford the typewriter capital of the world between 1900 and 1950. And that's what did it for me, the history. And then it just snowballed, one machine after another. The next weekend, another estate sale, another tag sale, more typewriters and more typewriters.
Where were you putting all these typewriters, Greg?
The garage, the basement, they go in this. I don't have a sunroom anymore. It's a typewriter room. They just kept on coming, and I just kept on accumulating.
You have a love for them. We have a lot of machines to get through, and I'm a lover of Art Deco, and a lot of these speak to that time and before. Let's start with the first one.
Okay.
It's sitting right by us. This, you're tabbing. How does this work? Tell me about this typewriter.
It's a Franklin typewriter. It was made in Boston, and it was invented by a guy named Wellington Parker Kidder. I believe it's circa 1890. This is a #2 model. #1 is incredibly rare. It's incredibly hard to find. I think I only know of one. And it has a nice, beautiful curved keyboard, space bars. This is a shift. This is another shift. It works like a traditional typewriter. Keys strike from behind. Carriage advances. Paper goes in here. It's a pretty straightforward machine. It's nothing fancy, but it's really beautiful to look at. And
we were talking before we went on camera, and you said you have had a $30,000 typewriter,
correct,
but they can go all the way up to
about $125,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to this one. This smaller. What would this be used for?
It's typewriters, writing on paper.
Okay.
This is actually European. I believe it's German. And it's meant for the Austrian market specifically. The correspondent is for the Austrian market. It's a rebrand from the ROFA. It's a ROFA. This is made in about 1920, and for this design to have been made in the 1920s, it's late. This sort of curved keyboard, 3 rows of keys, that's very late. By the 1920s, most typewriters were 4 rows of keys, traditional keyboard, something that you and I are probably more familiar with than everybody else is as well.
The lettering is just beautiful.
It's stunning, isn't it?
It's a work of art. We have a little tiny one here, and you said this is a toy. It is a toy.
It's Dutch. It's made by Lange Legatoge.
Maybe we should put it right here. So
which is basically Lang's toy company, and it's an index machine, meaning it doesn't have a keyboard. You select a character from this index, and when your character comes up here, you just hit the space bar, and it brings the carriage forward, and that's it.
If you're on deadline, you're not using this.
No.
This is slow.
It's very slow, probably about 20-25 words per minute. It's terribly rare. There's only about 4 of these known, and I'm lucky enough to have one.
Wow.
I think it's the only one in the United States, as a matter of fact.
Really?
Yes.
An armed guard will take you out to your car then. All right, let's start on this end. Okay. What is this machine?
That is a Yost typewriter. It was invented by George Washington Newton Yost. That was the guy's name. What a fantastic name. And he was a super salesman. He's actually affiliated with the first commercially successful typewriter and the second commercially successful typewriter, and then this one being the third. So he was a big name in the typewriter world. It was made in Connecticut, I believe in Bridgeport. It has what we call a full keyboard, which is 2 keyboards. The first commercially successful typewriter was uppercase exclusively, and folks wanted to type uppercase and lowercase. But how do you do that? Well, it just seemed natural to have 2 keyboards. So that's what that has. It has we call it a full keyboard. And
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It also types from underneath the platen, so you can't see what you're typing. It's called, or we nicknamed it, a blind writer. So the carriage has to flip up if you wanted to see. If you wanted to just go ahead and grab one of those levers and just kind of flip up the carriage, you could show.
Just,
you know, watch. It kind of goes. This is.
Oh, I see.
You'd have to inspect it from there.
oh, I see. And where would you wouldn't use this in it. What year is this?
That's about 1887.
That's
yeah.
amazing. Beautiful machine. And what I notice is that they're on wood bases,
Right.
and they come with beautiful cases as
Correct,
well.
right.
Here's another one that's got a case on it.
It has a dome
With
top case.
With
yeah.
a dome top case and an insignia on the top. This is very interesting. How this works like this, yes?
Correct. It's not an index typewriter like this Junior. It's actually got a full keyboard in a circle like that, and you're supposed to use it like a regular keyboard. It's a horrible design. The guy patented it, I believe, about 1885-ish. Don't quote me on dates. But he didn't put it into production until about 1900, 15 years later, and it was just the wrong typewriter at the
Pretty,
wrong
though.
time.
Very pretty.
It's gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful. It's my favorite. It really is.
Really? Okay.
It's absolutely my favorite.
Let's go to this one. This one has wooden keys, you said.
Wooden
What
keys.
year is this one?
1884.
Wow.
Right. It's the oldest one here. It would have been the second commercially successful typewriter to have been produced, but he was slow. James Hammond, the inventor, he was a little slow, and the American writing machine put a machine out called the calligraph, and then they went to this Hammond, and it also tried to address some of those issues that the first commercially successful typewriter had, which was uppercase and no lowercase. Not be the first commercially successful typewriter was similar to that Yost. You couldn't see what you were typing. Mm-hmm. So with this one, you can kind of see a couple lines at a time.
That's so nice that you can see, but we evolved, right?
We've evolved.
These are all in working order. Do you clean them yourself and take care of them?
I do give them a cleaning. I do take care of them, and they do work as much as they need to. The carriage will advance, the keys will strike. I mean, I'm not going to stick a piece of paper in there and start typing.
Well, they're works of art, as we've said. The one on the end is very curious.
This is a Williams #1 typewriter. It was made at the domestic, I believe it's the Domestic Sewing Machine Company, and eventually the Williams typewriter was produced in Derby, Connecticut. This typewriter has an interesting key action mechanism.
Oh.
You can see these keys come out like grasshopper
it looks like a
legs.
praying mantis or something.
Right. And if you can imagine somebody typing from both sides, see if I can get one, there it goes. And striking really quickly, it's like grasshoppers' legs kicking at the carriage.
I see a YouTube video with that. You should play with that. That would be very interesting to see both those typing on both sides.
If I could type quickly, I would. Absolutely. Absolutely.
How do you remember all of this, Greg? Because you have such a passion?
It is a passion. It's what I do, and I love the history of it. I love the men that made these machines. I love absolutely everything about them. So it's work, but it's also a passion. And when you do something you love, it's really easy.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, we have some more photographs because we're going to just rifle through all these amazing machines that you have. Tell me about this one.
That is the Hartford typewriter, made in Hartford on Capitol Avenue. It's a peculiar typewriter because it only has 3 feet. 2 in the front, 1 in the back, which means no matter how worn those rubber feet get, it'll never get out of balance.
Oh, really? I would think it might get out of balance.
Only if you were typing from the back of the machine, but at the front of the machine, it wouldn't wobble at all.
What would be the cost of that one, just for grins?
Anywhere from 2 to about 6.
6,000.
Right.
Wow. All right, next machine.
That's a new Franklin that's similar to this Franklin. Made in Boston, curved keyboard.
What do you mean by new?
It's just the name they gave it, the New Franklin.
But it's still 1800s?
It's still right. It's not.
Next one.
Hammond, just like this one we discussed.
With the wood keys?
With the wood keys, correct.
Yeah. Next one.
That is a Jackson. That typewriter was first produced in Bridgeport, Connecticut, or at least the company was started in Bridgeport. Then they moved to Boston, produced a handful of typewriters, very rare, and after they closed in Boston, actually the company might have even have been purchased. The owner decided he was going to try and set up shop in New Haven. This typewriter, I believe it's New Haven, this one is actually marked made in New Haven, and it's almost a prototype of a number 2 model, I would call it. Number 1, there's a few more number 1s out there, but this is the only number 2 known.
Who knew we were such a hotbed in this state for typewriters? They were made all over the place in the state.
They were made, you had Blickensderfer in Stamford, Williams in Derby, also Secor in Derby, Dart in Hartford, Hartford in Hartford, the American Writing Machine in Hartford, Remington and the Noiseless in Middletown. In Norwalk, you had Postal. Yost was another one out of Bridgeport. And I'm missing a few. I think Pope, the manufacturer of bicycles and cars, they produced an index machine for a short time.
Boy, what a time.
Right, right.
Next picture. This is odd.
This is an index machine. It's also, it was made in New Haven, Connecticut by the Hodgson and Pettit Manufacturing Company. They optioned to make this machine. Again, it's an index. You see the index plate on the top with the characters. You select one of the characters and you depress a lever to print, and that entire top piece moves left to right on the carriage.
What would you use this for? This is not in a newsroom. What would you use that for?
That's exactly what it was intended for. All of these typewriters were intended to be used on a daily basis by professionals, maybe on traveling, because back then it was really the Wild West of typewriters. Everybody knew what they wanted these typewriters to do, which was print on paper, but they didn't know how to do it effectively. So that's why some of these typewriters type from up top, some type from underneath, some type from the rear. As a matter of fact, this type from both front and rear on the top. And so it was a Wild West up until Underwood shows up and basically made a typewriter that ended up being the blueprint for everything else to come.
Wow, I love learning all this. Next machine.
Correspondent.
Gorgeous.
That's this one, made in Europe, I think German, for the Austrian market.
It's beautiful.
It's stunning.
Next one.
Niagara. This is, I don't have a blick. This was made in Connecticut, in Stamford, Connecticut, and it's an index machine, again, very rare. It uses a Blickensderfer number 5 base, but adds an index instead of a keyboard. The Blickensderfer number 5, the first truly portable typewriter, weighed about 7 pounds-ish, made in Connecticut. Again, big industry here. This was an alternate to anybody that didn't want to use a keyboard, alternative.
Next one.
The Lambert that we had discussed earlier, that's one of my favorites, my absolute favorite.
What year is that?
Lambert, 1900.
Okay.
1900. That's the cash typograph. That's an interesting machine because the paper rests flat underneath that mechanism on top of the keyboard, and then that entire top section stays where it is, and the paper would just kind of move left or right.
Wow. And what do we have left here?
That's the Jackson again.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think we're to the end of our pictures. Oh, this is the toy.
That's the toy.
And any more?
Oh.
Oh, well, what is that, the Cadillac? What is this?
Can't forget the Blick Electric. It is the Holy Grail, my Holy Grail. It's a Blick Electric. It's Blickensderfer, again, made in Stamford, Connecticut. And it was thought for a long time to be the first ever commercially produced electric typewriter. Until recently, when the Cahill bubbled up, so this would be the second now. But still, it's beautiful, and I don't generally collect electric typewriters, but this is one of the machines that I would love to have.
What would that cost?
A lot of money.
Hundreds of thousands? 100,000?
Yeah, it could
That's
go
a
that
guess.
high. Yeah.
So they're rare.
They are.
They're very rare.
They're very rare.
You're a buyer of typewriters still to this day, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
How many typewriters do you own?
About 250.
About
250 typewriters.
250 typewriters. How many more do you want to buy?
All of them. All of the really great rare machines. It's just you want to buy them all. You do.
You want to set up a museum somewhere?
I'd love to. I'm working on plucking away at a book when I'm not watching my two sons. I'd love to write a book about the Connecticut's typewriter trail. I'd love to put a documentary together about typewriters. Maybe
you have
the last
to do
days.
that because
Right.
people have to know about this.
I agree 100%. I think the such rich history, typewriter history in Connecticut, and honestly, these are the predecessors to the phones we have in our pockets right now. If you look at your cell phone, your iPhones right now, they still have the QWERTY keyboard that was on that first commercially successful typewriter, the Scholes and Glidden of 1873. That hasn't changed.
Who made the first typewriter? Do you know? Who was it?
Well, the first commercially successful was Christopher Latham Scholes. He gets credit along with Carlos Glidden and Samuel Sewell out of Wisconsin.
So Connecticut doesn't get credit for the first one.
They don't. But
Darn it.
we perfected the typewriter here.
Well, there you go.
The portable, the noiseless, and Royal and Underwood, we perfected typewriters in Connecticut.
Do you ever sell anything that you own? Or is it like giving away a child?
A little, yes, both. I do sell. It's always nice to upgrade. I'd love to upgrade this Williams #1. It's supposed to have really beautiful Victorian inspired embellishments all around, and this one is it's a little worn, but if I were ever to upgrade, I'd sell this one, absolutely.
Are you sought after in other parts of the country? Do people want you to come and tell them about typewriters and learn about that, or do they not know about you yet until this show?
I've been asked a few times. I almost always say yes because I love talking about typewriters, but no, it's not as, people just don't know me yet.
Well,
The typewriter community knows me, I think.
they're about to. Your website is the Anti-Key Shop.
Right.
What does that mean?
Well, it's two things. First, it kind of sounds like the antique shop, but also the anti-key chop is a bit of a philosophy against key choppers. And what key choppers do is they would find these glass top keys, they'd cut off the keys, they'd make jewelry out of them, necklaces, cufflinks, things like that, and they toss the rest of the typewriter. I think it's a shame for somebody to grab something like this and just keep the keys.
Unless it's in bad repair or
Sure,
something.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a basement full of old typewriters with glass top keys that I've cannibalized for parts, and I guess eventually maybe I'd sell the keys. I don't know, but I don't do it yet. I don't know what to do.
Well, Greg Fudacz, thank you so much for sharing your collection with us and letting us know about the history of typewriters in the state of Connecticut. And
This has been fun.
yeah, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
I'll let you know. This has
you.
been very fun. Thank you.
Thanks.
Made a trivial pursuit, spend one this in. Who is this girl I spend all night kissing? And if Walter's right here, then who else is missing? Got a little sidetracked to find myself wishing to find the keys to the door, but it's also a metaphor. Things to keep locked in the grocery store of my mind. Just to save time, I'll skip right ahead to the last ride. The harder we look, the less we can see. Don't you know, that you need me.